Thank you very much for joining us for Coffee with the Candidates. I have Paul Harens with us here today, and we are going to be doing interviews with all of the candidates for the legislature, both the Senate and the House, and those are all available for your viewing pleasure at yanktonsd.com. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewing audience?
Okay. My name is Paul Harens. Most of you know me as Mr. Harens or Harens and an occasional Scruffy. I've lived in Yankton for 44 years. I taught for 31 years up at YHS, and I also did subbing, and I also taught an adjunct professor up at Mount Marty. I am married to Kathy, who did daycare at our home and at Mount Marty for 32 years. We have 2 children and 4 grandchildren.
And for full disclosure, you were Mr. Harens for me while I was in high school. So please share how your views align with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
Well, first you need to realize is most people have never read those party candidate platforms. If you ever read them, what you will find out is that they're there for a purpose to persuade people to vote for the party, not the individuals. And basically, if you read both of them, they pretty much say the same thing, but different emphasis. However, individual rights to Democrats is much different than individual rights for the Republicans. I believe the general principles of the Democrats are something everybody could follow. We have to realize that no 2 people are alike or may not have the same belief system that somebody else does. The Democrats recognize more so than the Republicans of that. Democrats respect the individual differences, which is one of the reasons I support that platform.
So with South Dakota being a state that is funded primarily on property tax and sales tax, how do we continue to raise enough money for our state government to run effectively and create a prosperous environment for development?
We have to get creative. Now, I am totally against a state income tax. I am against personal property taxes. Some of you don't remember those, but they were really bad. One example would be the legalization of marijuana for private use and tax the crap out of it. That's what several states who have legalized do, and that is putting millions of dollars into their coffers. Our largest industry is tourist industry. Years ago, Florida had a tax of 1.5%. That the people who were citizens of the state didn't pay it, but anybody who didn't have a Florida driver's license had to pay that 1.5% tax. That's another way. But we could also increase the sin taxes and other taxes. We could increase the amount of money we take from legalized gambling. That would be another way. Look at some of the other taxes, like, for example, on the big campers. We have the cheapest rate in the nation for those. That's why we have like 25,000 people who have their campers registered in South Dakota. I have a brother-in-law that did it. He says, because if I register it in Florida, it's $5,000. It's under $1,000 in South Dakota.
So what are your views on funding the public education system in South Dakota? And what will help our kids in South Dakota be prepared for post-high school options?
Okay, this is one of the great topics that I am very interested in. We need to expand it overall, both for pre-K, which isn't funded at all right now, but needs to be funded, pre-K through 12, and through vocational and college. One of the biggest problems with those is budgeting. When it comes to education, education is the last thing that is budgeted in the state legislature. We get what's ever left over, and if there's not enough there, we don't get anything. Right now, there are other areas that could be taxed. We've talked about that. There are 60 school districts right now that have opted out. For example, like Yankton has opted out 6 years, I believe now. But every year we have money left over, it goes back to the coffers of the taxation. Education should be funded first and foremost. We need to have the youth a reason to stay in South Dakota, which means spending on education not only on the pre-K level and 12, but on the college and the vocational school level. I believe the students in South Dakota are being well prepared in the future right now. We have strong academic classes, both in vocational areas and the academic areas, and the technical areas. We need to go to both of those areas for the pure and simple reason, not everybody needs to go to college. We need to help those students achieve also. Yankton has an excellent program to do that. The real problem is, how are the things being taught to the students also? There being less and less reliance on teachers and administrators on who have the background and experience in education deciding how and what to do in education. So we get people who don't know a whole lot about education making those decisions. Students aren't dumb. They know what's going on and they are amazed that it's happening, and that's one of the reasons they leave.
So I want to go back to one of the statements that you made in regards to pre-K not being funded. What some of the viewers might not know is that here in Yankton we do offer free preschool for 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and junior kindergarten, but as you're saying, the state is not providing additional funding for that.
Not a dime. In fact, I would bet that part of that money we have for our opt-out goes to help pay for that. And one of the things you have to look at is things like that. I think there's 4 school systems in the state that are offering free PK and all that. That's a fairly new program that's come in the last 10 years since I've retired. But it is one of the necessary programs we really need. We have to get the kids prepared to be able to go in school and getting the basics of all the reading and stuff, and they can start that in the younger age then.
And I do appreciate you mentioning not all youth want to have a associate's degree or they want to go to college, that either going into the military or going straight into the workforce are really good viable options.
You bet. I had a student just the other day, former student. I didn't have him as a teacher, but I did a long-term sub job and he was there. And he is now a plumber. And he says, I remember you talking about that. The plumbers get $100 an hour. And you're right.
There are a lot of good jobs in the trades, that is for sure. Property rights have been a big topic for the past few years. Explain your views on property rights.
Well, the Supreme Court of South Dakota just ruled that private carbon pipeline company cannot go onto somebody's land and start survey digging for a proposed pipeline. What the decision said is you can't make CO2 a commodity when it's not. So they sent that decision back to the lower courts where they're going to have to go back to court. And everything I've read, it's not a commodity, which I've said from the beginning. I told my wife that when I first heard the whole argument, and I said, they're right. Well, the Supreme Court said so. It's a big win for the landowners, and I will be voting against referred law 21. It was referred to as the landowner's bill of rights, but the big thing is it actually did strip the landowner of the abilities to voice their concerns about land use to their county government when it relates to pipelines. In other words, they couldn't go to the local county board and complain. They have to go to Peer, and Peer's not going to listen to them. I'm a big believer in the South Dakota democratic process that allows local people to control local land use. And I will continue to be an advocate for that, balancing landowners' constitutionally protected rights from government taking and the need of government to have sensible, reasonable land use for development.
So how do you intend to work with those who have different views than you?
I was a teacher for over 40 years. I was also the head debate coach for most of my teaching career. I love disagreement. I mean, on purpose in class, I would take the opposite side what anybody was saying, and then I'd switch sides. They didn't understand that. But the thing about it, when you start looking at this, you have to do it the correct way. And acting disagreeable just to act disagreeable isn't the way to do it. I mean, I've run into that already in my canvassing now. But debate is good. That's why I had all the kids out that did it. One of the things you do as a debate coach, you get the students to see the other side of the argument. Because there's always more than one side. And sometimes there's 5 or 6 types of arguments you can think of. And I'm pretty good at doing that myself. One of the things about seeing the other side is you realize the other side is not your enemy. They just disagree with you. And you may agree on part of what they're saying, so why not talk about those areas and then expand on that? Because sometimes the other side makes some good arguments.
What are your strategies to fill the thousands of jobs available in South Dakota so our companies can continue to expand and flourish?
Did you know that 80% of the people living in the homeless shelter here in Yankton have full-time jobs? What does that tell you? I learned that in this campaign, and it shocked me because I've done volunteer work with them a lot. We have a full-blown housing crisis here in Yankton and in South Dakota. We can't expect people to stay here or move here if they can't have a roof over their family's head. We have to do that. And Yankton's been working at it pretty good, but there's still not enough. The legislature did appropriate $2 million of housing, but when the governor really messed up implementing the program, and during the screw-up, we saw rapid inflation in housing. I think we need to streamline that development. I think we need to review if the loan program is working, or we need to make changes to that program, which I think we do. The other basic problem that is both a problem here in Yankton and statewide is the problem of childcare. We can't go to work on predictable schedules because of lack of affordable daycare. South Dakota actually leaves a lot of federal money on the table because we restrict eligibility for child care assistance for families. I think we should expand the eligibility. It's a no-brainer. And we are already paying for it when we pay out our federal taxes, so why not get some of that tax money back? We also need to encourage more people to go into daycare. Kathy had problems with students who qualified for hours paid by the assistance program. But here's what she had. She had a student who was carrying 16 hours as a full-time student. She had 2 little kids. She was only allowed X number of hours a week, but then she had to work 20 hours someplace. By the time they're juniors in their junior year, especially like in nursing, they couldn't do it. They dropped out. And that's a problem then. We don't want that to happen. Lastly, I feel the impact of inflation we've had in the last year is tough to combat national inflation from a state legislature. But one instance, I was disappointed to read that the governor rejected $68 million in energy efficient grants. I mean, when I had my house, every year we bought something new. I know we had 3 different furnaces in our house over the years. Each time we had that grant, and it helped pay for it. And that's why we did it when we did it. It could have lowered cost. It could have allowed more people improvements on their property. It could have been good for South Dakota. We can always have lower costs for our citizens in South Dakota, and don't reject money that's there.
And I do want to make a note for the viewing audience that of the $200 million that was allocated to the legislature, Yankton did receive grant funding out of that of $1.26 million for the Gale Drive project, which will have multifamily housing, and then right around $2 million for Garden Estates, which is single family homes. So Yankton was able to directly benefit from those grant dollars at the legislature.
You bet.
So what topics need to be addressed to support agriculture in South Dakota?
You know, there are a lot of programs out there for the ag people that some of them are not aware of, and they need to get to their local areas to find out what they are, or talk to the state. This year, for example, there's a $52 million in grant programs out there for various number of different topics. And state government should make sure we do nothing that will harm agriculture along with these ideas. Here's some of the ideas that the Democrats have had. The expansion of local food and farmers markets along with regional ag producing systems to focus on diverse and different sustainable practice. Minimize the impact of corporate farmers and stress those family farms and operated farms in order to protect the producers from unfair practices or inequitable profits. Research on economic development of value-added cultural products, including hemp, perennial grains, renewable energy, and other emerging ag-based technology. Programs to support and educate emerging producers to help establish the next generation of agriculturists. One of the things that South Dakota should really do, and I know they have a small program, they need to expand it, is getting the young producers out there. Because how many of them can, they'd say, well, I'm going to buy my dad's farm. Well, dad's farm on paper is $1 million. Who's going to loan an 18 or a 19-year-old kid $1 million? They aren't gonna. So we have to find some programs out there that would give them some ideas to help to get that money.
Yeah, that's one of the most difficult situations, we've encountered when I'm talking with people in the ag industry is young people whose parents aren't in agriculture and they want to get into the industry, but there's really not an opportunity for them unless they're just leasing land from someone else because it's just not affordable.
That's right.
So if elected, how will you prepare for the 2025 legislative session, and how do you want to receive input from the voters of District 18?
Okay. those are the people who know me know I'm a researcher. I get it from debate. I've got a 20 plus file folders already that have at least 4 or 5 articles on each topic. And it's all things that concern us in South Dakota. Some of them are on the ballot issues right now because many of the ballot issues that we have this year are going to greatly affect our budgeting process. The biggest one is the grocery one. And everything I've read says it's going to pass. So we're going to have to come up with some money. Now, the biggest problem there is I've heard about 6 different numbers of how much it's going to cost the state and how much they have to replace. The first number I heard was $109 million. Next number I've heard now is $140 million. And I read another guy who said, oh, no, it's going to be at least $200 million. So which number do you believe? The state, they legislative research, but they were the ones who were figuring $109 million. So that's one probably I'd go with. But those are some of the things that are going to come up. But I also urge anyone that has an idea of what should be brought up or be talked about or what to do about some of these issues, please contact me. My email is real easy. It's harensforhouse@gmail.com. And I've got Paul Harens for House as a website. I'm also on Facebook. It's Harens for House on Facebook. You leave me ideas there or just contact me personally. Some of you need my phone number, somebody will get it to you. I'm some kind of well known.
And I will say that even the people who have different views from you based upon what you've said, you want to hear from them as well so you can make educated decisions hearing on both sides of an issue.
Absolutely. In fact, starting this week, I'm going to be out of town, but starting next week for sure, we will be hitting every house, not just the Democrat and Independents.
Mm-hmm. And people who are wanting to learn more about the food tax item that is on the agenda, we have a learning session on IM 28 on September 19th at 9 o'clock in the morning at Discovery Church, or the Gathering Ground is what they're calling it downtown. And so if you're watching this prior to that event, we hope that you're able to come down because we are having both sides of the issue presented.
You can also go to the auditor's office. They have a little packet of all the initiated ballot questions, all 7 of them. And they tell you about pro and con on both sides there. And that's a freebie. You just walk in and get it.
Yeah, that is a nice resource that's available also if you're looking for it online at the Secretary of State's website. All right, Paul, why should voters check the box by your name on the ballot?
The best reason is I offer a different voice and a better choice to represent District 18. One of my opponents has voted to take $109 million away from public education. That type of budget cut to education would close the small schools. It would affect Gayville Volin, Irene Maconda. It would really hurt Yankton. Extracurriculars would be gone because then not even all parents can pay for those. Fewer teachers means lower test scores. That's the bottom line. I support our public schools. I'm not a career I waited till now to ever run. And I'm not a career politician. I plan on doing this for maybe 2 sessions and I'm done. And I can make that promise to you right now. I'm not going to keep going and keep going. So I don't care what they want to do on the national level. Because here's the bottom line. Voting for the president and vice president is important. But the bottom line, that's not going to greatly affect you. Who's going to affect you is the legislator. So that's who you need to vote for.
Are there any topics that we did not cover today with any of the previous questions that you would like to share your thoughts on with the viewing audience?
Well, like I just said, I'm a newcomer to this game. And I've talked a lot about my teaching career. But I'm like all teachers. I had to have a summer job for many years. For 6 years, I built power lines in 3 different states. I worked out in the hot summer sun, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and sometimes longer when we had a tornado job. One summer I worked as a mover here in Yankton. I moved 12 different families in and out of town. One time, one of them, guy hired me, lived right across the river, and says, "Can you load up a semi to move me?" And I said, "Yes." Load him out. He had a glass desktop that was as big as a house almost. And it got all the way to Florida and didn't break. Now the 6 mirrors his wife walked in with the day we were leaving, those broke, but the big glass didn't. And I've done different things too. I worked out at Alumex one summer as maintenance for the summer. The next summer, I tried working on the line. Not for me. I did it for 3 weeks, and that was it. I was enough. But I've had all these different occupations. My most fun one was working in yesterday's cafe, where it was when it was there, where Hy-Vee is now, and then their new one. I train cooks. That's what Dan Primble had me doing. So I've had all kinds of different jobs, and that has really affected how I've even taught for years.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here today. And as a reminder for the viewing audience, Paul Harens is running for the House of Representatives as a Democrat. Fellow Democrat Sarah Mechtenberg, his name is also on the ballot, as well as Republicans Julie Auk and Mike Stevens. So we invite you to go out and start with absentee voting on September 20th, and then in-person voting on November 5th. You can check out the yanktonsd.com, Yankton Thrives website, and we will be posting information of the locations where you can vote in District 18. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.